Okay, we should be live. Let's see. Oh my gosh, we're back. Let's see. I'm checking my phone for the audio. Looks like it's working. Please comment in the live chat how everything sounds and also looks. Apparently there's reflection a little bit. Oh, here we go. Hold on. Let's fix that. There we go. Reflection of my screen. How's that? That's better, right? Oh man, take 2 weeks off, maybe even 3, and you definitely get rusty. But it's later than I wanted to start streaming tonight. What else is new? Not that much, apparently, even though it's a new year. But timeline still consistent. But I'm happy to be back, and I hope everybody had a really wonderful holiday season and a Merry Christmas and a Happy Hanukkah and a Happy New Year. It was ours was very nice. It was spent with family, but yeah, it was very nice. It was nice. It's kind of nice to take a break from just all the normal like routine of life a lot of times during the holidays. You can, I don't know, you just relax because everybody around you usually is on the same schedule, which is means they're all spending time with their family. They don't want to worry about work, etc. That's just it's a nice thing. It's an important thing, I think. Holidays, and they kind of realign everyone with each other a bit, I think, and because everybody's so focused on their own personal goals all the time, that it's just the way of the world, and it's not necessarily always a problem. But it's interesting. Like my watch, if I don't wear my watch for like a day because it doesn't have batteries, it relies on you moving. It starts to lose time, and every now and then I have to I guess what's it called? Readjust it. I'm not a watch person. I have one watch, and especially if I haven't worn it. But imagine like everybody's got a watch, and then the holidays are kind of like everybody is like resetting their clock, and in some way it's automatically you're setting them together, if that makes any sense. It realigns or recoheres, I guess, maybe everyone in some way. It's a nice thing. So anyways, Happy New Year. Lots of plans for this year, and lots of goals, lots of things that I would like to accomplish. But there is a stream that we're going to talk about tonight that is very good, and I think it's a great way to kick off this year. And we should also have some interviews coming up, not too distant future. Not even interviews, but I guess more live discussions with people, and I'm looking forward to that. And but if you're not familiar with the channel, this is the Theory of EveryOne channel, and where I talk about metaphysics and philosophy and theology and meaning and morals, and kind of all through the lens of a philosophical framework that I have put forward called Sentient Singularity Theory. And there's links to the website and to other videos about it down below. So for anyone who is curious. But for this discussion tonight, this commentary, I guess, we're going to look at a conversation between Curt Jaimungal and Bas van Fraassen. I hope I got that correct. But he is a philosopher of science, I guess you could say. I had never actually heard of him before this, and it's interesting because I I philosophize a lot. I don't want to call myself a philosopher because who calls themselves a philosopher really? Like, um, I mean, maybe I guess if you do, I guess if you do it every week and you've got on, you philosophize on a regular schedule, regularly, then maybe you could be called a philosopher. I definitely don't think that you don't need a PhD to be that, but you know, do you have to be paid to be for your philosophy to be a philosopher? I have no idea, but I definitely philosophize a lot. But I usually do it myself, really just thinking about the world and a question that I have, or a problem that I see, and trying to build a framework from first principles and from first person experience that prioritizes first person experience, a model of the world, um, as it is relevant to that question that I have, or whatever whatever it is, the thought that topic that I'm interested in, and I kind of just do it on my own. And so I don't know a lot of the philosophers of today or the past, really. Like I'm well aware of that. I don't study the philosophical works of past philosophers really beyond watching other people talk about them sometimes on YouTube every now and then. But it's not. I don't remember the last time I looked up the philosophy of Aristotle or anything like that. I just don't do that. And I have before, but it honestly, it goes in one ear out the other a lot of times. And there are some people that I definitely whose ideas I resonate with more, like Leibniz and stuff. But even that, I'm not very familiar with his, all the detail of his work, just specific concepts that he, was in favor of, I guess. But Bas van Fraassen is a modern philosopher, and it's always interesting to see somebody who in the modern world. And it's interesting. Curt, in this interview, he says that there's a Reddit called Ask Philosophy. I think I'm not familiar with that subreddit, but I'm not the most Reddit literate person either. And but apparently people ask in there, who are the contemporary philosophers that would, in modern day, that will be studied or remembered in the past or in the future, like we, do so to certain philosophers in the past. And one of them is Bas van Fraassen. And this is his Wikipedia, and says, he's a Dutch-American philosopher noted for contributions to philosophy of science, epistemology, and formal logic. He is distinguished professor of philosophy at San Francisco State University and the Mikosh, I don't know how to pronounce that, professor of philosophy emeritus at Princeton University. Guys, I don't even know what emeritus means, to be honest. Let's see. An honorary title granted to somebody who retires from a position of distinction. Okay, fair enough. But he is an adult convert to the Roman Catholic Church, so he's Catholic. He is a theist, and he is focused on, the philosophy and language, I guess you could say, it seems, of science. And I'm not an expert on his work at all. I literally only know him from this one interview. I'm going to look more into him after this because I think it's a wonderful talk, and I think he is a great thinker from what I can see. But yeah, this interview that we're going to speak about is the first time I had ever heard of him, which is kind of odd, I will say. I wonder, how much that has to do with the fact that he is a theist, or whether or not it's just due to the fact that the people who have PhDs, and a lot of the people who have PhDs in philosophy, not all of them, I know some that are great, but a lot of them, just because of the academic culture is so anti-theistic, that that might have something to do with it. But it also might be that if you're an anti-theist, which means an atheist, there's no difference. We're going to talk about that. They discuss it in here. Then, and I'm not talking about religion or specific religion or theological tradition of or scriptural tradition, any specific one. I'm talking about just believing that existence itself is a single sentient being that is an eternal sentient being. It is a someone that we are within. It's not just something. It is someone. That is theist. If you don't believe it, that existence is a sentient being, that it is someone, then you are an anti-theist. But academia is very anti-theistic in its culture, and they talk about it on here, and we'll look at it. But also, that if that's true, if theism is the truth, that means, which I mean, this whole channel is about that, then that means that anyone who's an anti-theist can't be that great at philosophy. Like, you just can't. That doesn't mean you're not talented at it, because I was extremely talented at philosophizing. I'm trying not to call myself a philosopher because it feels weird, but I don't know if it's wrong or for me to not call myself that, or wrong for me to call myself that. I don't really know. But I was always talented at philosophizing, not at knowing and memorizing all the different metaphysical frameworks of every famous philosopher of the past. That's not something that I am good at even now. I'm terrible at it, actually. But I have been good at thinking, pretty good at thinking most of my life. I've gotten much better. It's a skill that you develop. It's not something that you're just born with. I mean, you can be born more talented at it versus less talented, but it's not IQ. It has to do with more with kind of like personal humility, I guess, like understanding, recognizing when you are where your limits are, because that is a necessary thing to understanding the thinking process, which they're going to talk about. But I would say that if you could be talented at philosophizing, and you can know a lot about philosophers and philosophy. You can memorize it, everything that everybody else has written. But you are not going to have, if theism is true and you're an anti-theist, then your philosophy about the world, your personal philosophy, is not going to be very good. It's actually going to be pretty bad, probably. It's going to have a limit, and that limit is, probably the most important limit, because it's what everything else is built on. But that's not a judgment. That is a deduction. But the thing is that if you are, what I'm trying to get at after all this rambling is, most people who are studying philosophy today in an academic setting are probably anti-theists or self-described quote unquote atheists. And that means that if they see somebody who has a theistic philosophical model of the world, they are not going to recognize that as good philosophy. And maybe that's also why I've never heard of this guy. But he definitely deserves to be have more exposure, which is part of why I am doing the stream on this discussion tonight. So, like I said, please hit the like button. Actually, I don't know if I said that yet, but please hit the like button. Please subscribe if you haven't. Hit the bell notification. Really helps enormously. And comment any questions that you have in the live chat. And if you're watching this live, if you're not watching this live, comment them in the comments and I will get to them. And I might even bring it up on Ask Me Anything. So, first clip.
that is, exist. It's really the same thing. But as I say,
Hold on one second. That's not what I'm trying to. Here it is.
I'm not a thing. I'm not a thing of any kind. I'm not a physical thing. I'm not an abstract thing. I'm not something supernatural. I'm not a thing, period.
Professor Bas van Fraassen's 1980 book, The Scientific Image, detonated a bomb in the philosophy of science that's still reverberating to this day. The professor argues that science doesn't aim to give us true theories about unobservable reality. Science just aims for empirical adequacy. Full stop. So all of this truth about quarks, wave functions, space-time curvature, it's all just supererogatory. Optional. Not the goal. Today, we turn to the self and the limits of language. Von Fraassen draws on Tarski's limitative theorems and demonstrates that we can't construct a true representation of our own language, and therefore, we can't adequately represent ourselves. It's logically impossible. My name's Curt Jaimungal, and on this channel, I interview researchers about their theories of reality with rigor and technical depth. Most of the time, it's from a theoretical physics perspective, but today, I have one of the legends in contemporary philosophy, one of the most cited philosophers in the philosophy of science, Professor Bas van Fraassen. Questions explored today are: what is real? What is science? Where does free will enter? What am I/who are you? Even faith, and what is God? Many people have a concept of quote-unquote reality, and so do many philosophers. What is that concept, and why do you think the question of what is reality is not such a great question?
Well, I would say, logically speaking, everything is real. But we can make a distinction between reality and appearance. Like Carlo Rovelli's book with the title "Reality is not what it looks like," I think something like that. Right? Reality is not what it appears. We can make a distinction between how things appear to us and how we think they really are. Now, that has been a philosophical problem during the modern period. But for me, it's not a very good question, because I think that what's important is exactly what appears to us. And when we try to add to this a kind of, superstructure or substructure, we are theorizing, we're fictionalizing, we are trying to find things that go beyond our ken, so to speak. And it seems to me that it has been a typical misconception of science that is what it's trying to do.
Does science always provide a model?
Yes, science provides models. Yes, scientists construct models. Models are representations. I mean, you can begin with the tabletop model, right? Say with a double.
Okay. So this is, if you watch my channel, this is a lot about what I talk about. And this is why I stress language, like specific language, so much. And I actually believe that there is a right word for something always. It's not as arbitrary of a choice as we now believe. I don't think we always believed that, because kind of like the construction of language itself requires the assumption that there is a right word, and that is specific, and you have to deduce it. You can't just create it. And so that's something that I talk about, and I talk about the limits of your understanding. And so one of the things that he said here is, he said that he's talking about how science is not about he said that when people say, what is reality? I say that this is a terrible question as well, and kind of explain it differently. But I say very often that if you're real, it's real. So people will say, is reality real? Is reality a simulation? All these questions that I think are miscontextualized and therefore bad questions. And because the word reality it's assuming that there's something separate from, that there is a separation from what we perceive from what is, essentially. And that's not true. Or you can't assume that. That's my point. You can't assume that. To assume that is nonsensical from our perspective. It doesn't make any logical sense, and it's also a limit that you have. And so I think there's this fake humility a lot, where it's that kind of has perpetuated and infected all aspects of society, and part of that is in kind of the sciences. And somebody actually commented this in a comment on my channel on a video pretty recently. They said something like, I said, you have to believe in your own existence, something like that. And they basically said, why would you limit your understanding of reality to your personal understanding of reality? Like, it could be so much more and so different. And there might be so much that we don't know, something like that. And I apologize if I'm botching it too much, but I responded with something like, you cannot just say, you cannot assume that what you perceive is not real. Unless you're going to a magic show, because the point is that you are assuming that what you are going to see is false. It's an illusion. There's a different context. I'm talking about, but not you at a magic show, not, whatever his name is. I don't even know then. David Blaine, maybe something like that. The guy, one of the Vegas guys. I think there's like two of them. But those tricks we understand are illusions. You can't really fly. And that's that is understood, though. Like, he is an illusionist. That's what he is. And his job is to show us something that appears impossible, but is actually like just a trick of perspective. And so what we need to understand is that it's not that you should never assume that what you perceive, not what you want, but what you actually perceive, and is false. Okay. What you need to understand is that your perspective, and what you should assume at least, is that your perspective is limited. Not it's that it shouldn't be trusted, but that it is limited. That's it. And we tend to pose this question of like, is reality real or not? And it's like, that's a terrible question that doesn't even make any sense. But it's in science and philosophy of science, when we're talking about, what do we trust, which they get into in a minute, which there's an example that he gives that elaborates on kind of my point, but probably more coherently than I am right now. But you have to recognize, as I said at the beginning of this, the limits to be good at thinking, or to think well. I will say this, to think well, because everybody can have their moments where they suck, and everybody can have their moments where they do, great. Genius and idiocy are moments that everybody experiences. They are not people. There are no geniuses and idiots. Everyone has moments of genius and moments of idiocy, all the time. And you can definitely improve your ability to think, because thinking there's a specific way to do it. There is a pattern to thinking that is, you cannot just change. There's only one way to think, to truly think, and you can get better at it. Everybody can get better at it. Some people are going to naturally be better at it, but everybody can get better at it, and everybody can fail at it. You could be Chris Langan and have a 200 IQ, and you can fail at thinking. I'm sure he has, because we all have. But this being good at it comes from partially the understanding the limits of one's perspective, and understanding the hierarchy that you must arrange what you perceive into, the information that you perceive into. So you have to, like I've said before, you have to prioritize firsthand experience over secondhand information. If I tell you that, the water in the pot on the stove is cold, but you put your hand in it and it burns you, which information should you believe? Me, or your own feeling and of your skin burning? Obviously the second one. But the thing is, you should believe your firsthand experience. which was the second example that I gave. But this also applies to what we learn in school. And when we learn a lot of information that we memorize from textbooks and from people who have also just memorized it and who haven't experienced it or even perceived it truly. Look at how many people have seen even an electron, let alone a quark. I'm not saying that those models are wrong. I'm saying that they are models, and that, which is exactly what he said. Science produces models, but should you trust the information that comes from a textbook just because it's been peer reviewed over your own personal experience? No, definitely not. When there's a conflict, your firsthand experiences should trump whatever somebody else tells you, even if they have a Nobel Peace Prize and a Nobel Prize in physics, and they're the Pope and the Dalai Lama. It doesn't matter. Like they could be every one of these things, and you should trust your own personal experience. But understand that it's limited. Always. Limited does not mean wrong. Here. But I will just say, if people are asking, like, is the world real? If you're real, it's real. If you're real, it's as real as it needs to be. You are the one who defines whether or not your world is real. Think about the hierarchy of language, even in this statement, is like what you're asking when you say, is this real? Is our world real? You're really kind of asking, is my world real? And there is a built-in assumption into the statement that it's built on the assumption that you exist. And the thing is if you're real, then it's real. And if you can ask the question, then you exist. And so you should assume that you exist. This was basically what the contention was on my channel. Actually, let me look up what the comment was. I'm not trying to call anybody out, but it is actually probably helpful. Let's see. So comments. Okay. Probably this. Newest. I think it's on this channel. I'm not very good at social media. I'm definitely getting older. I can tell. They changed one thing and I'm like, what did you do? You rock my world. And they changed a lot on YouTube. Let's see, maybe I can find it. I think he said, yeah, this is what he said. He said, I'm guessing they are referencing perceiver thoughts in this. Thinking of myself as someone, because I said that you are someone. That's what I said. I said you are someone. That, like, what are you? You are someone. That's what you are. This is the theory. This channel is called the Theory of EveryOne because Sentient Singularity Theory is about singularities of sentience. Someone, singular. Someone. That's what you are. You're not something. Your body is something, but you are someone. And that's the difference. God, whether you believe in God or not, is whether or not you believe existence itself, the totality of it, is someone, not just something. That's why you can't say, oh, I believe in higher power. That doesn't Is a power someone? I actually think that the only power is agent. It comes from agency, no matter what. But that's the only power that exists is agency, and there's one agent that is the most powerful agent. So like that's where the power is. But this is I said you are someone. I didn't think that was that like controversial thing to say. And this person said, thinking of myself as someone leads me to want to attach an ego or personal narrative. And if I'm understanding this person correctly, I hope I am, because if I'm not, then I apologize. But I think that I am. Basically saying like, that means I'm a personal someone. If I say that I'm someone, that makes me think that I'm that's a personal, there is a personal narrative there about a specific person, which is me, someone. And he goes, leads me to want to attach an ego or personal narrative. I don't think it's a want. I think it's a requirement. But he said, but I think they are trying to look deeper into something more fundamental, basically, because this was during my conversation, my commentary about Bernardo Kastrup and Alex O'Connor's discussion. And I think Bernardo Kastrup said something like, I don't exist. I don't really exist. And I think that is insane. And I say that technically, like it is nonsensical in every way to say that. It delegitimizes everything else that you say, if that's true. And I don't think he realizes that, or he's using that statement very differently. That means something very different when he says that statement than what I take away from it. But I don't think so, because I watched him talk about it. But I think I just think that this is an issue of confusion. But then this person, though, in the comments they said they were trying to like say that Bernardo's trying to think deeper actually than like past this facade of personhood or of someoneness. Maybe there's something really deeper, like who are you or what are you really, deeper than someone. And they said, but I think they're trying to look deeper at something more fundamental. Again, something more fundamental. This doesn't make any sense, because the person says myself. They're saying me. Me, I, as a self, someone, like that there's something deeper to that. That's not possible by definition of the word, of these terms, person, self, someone. Like these are dependent and implicative of the foundational assumption that you are someone, that you are a person, that you are not just something, and to think that there's something deeper than someone when yourself and myself and any self is defined as someone, not something, is just not, it doesn't make any sense. You can literally figure this out by looking at the logic, and I might be failing at being as coherent as would be ideal. But I hope I'm making some sense. Please let me know in the chat if you understand or if I'm failing. But that just doesn't make any sense what this person said. But my response was, oh man. Okay, there we go. They said it's challenging it's certainly challenging to not naturally identify as a person. That's how they started this. And then they said it's very intuitive and seems obvious, but just because you feel like a singular consciousness doesn't necessarily mean that it's an accurate understanding. We think of a swarm of bees or a colony of ants as a large group of individuals, and we might call that group behavior a collective consciousness. I don't think that's at all relevant. And I would disagree with everything that he just said, actually. But calling an ant colony a collective and a human a singular consciousness is a mistake. Is it? Like, why would that be a mistake? Our bodies are composed of living cells, and so we are a collective as well. Yes, but there's a difference, and I've talked about it and explained it many times on here, and I just don't really have time to get into it. But there's a eusocial society, a eusocial group, which would be ants and bees and wasps. Eusocial is like it's an animal that has like a caste system set up, and people think that humans are becoming eusocial, and I think that that's true. And there's only one other eusocial mammal in the world, and it's the naked mole rat. It's also the only other naked mammal in the world. That is not a meaningless coincidence. It is absolutely because we are becoming eusocial. The more eusocial we become, the more hairless we become, just like naked mole rats. But naked mole rats are like bees and ants and wasps. Like there is a queen, and she produces the offspring, and then there's workers, and there's soldiers, and there's breeders, and the same thing goes with ants and bees and wasps. That is nobody thinks. I don't think of that as a collective consciousness. It's not. But you just because you have a bunch of cells in you doesn't mean that you share nature with that. There is some similarities, but you and your personal own experience should absolutely be constant confirmation, more than proof, that you are a single person as well. This is called a sentient singularity. There's also pseudo-singularities in sentient singularity, which I think are like plants and planaria worms, which really appear to be a single organism or a single being, but you may call them a singular organism, but they are not a singular, most likely not a singular sentience. But like you are a single sentient being, and your body is composed of an assembly of a collective of single sentient beings that are called cells. And so that's not the same as just like a group of animals living together and having a caste system. Like that's not it. But just like think about how insane, and I say this technically, like I hate using that word because it sounds judgmental, but just know that I'm using it, I'll say nonsensical, but it's beyond nonsensical. It's like the most nonsensical you could possibly be, is to deny your own existence. And it invalidates everything else that you say after that. So it's challenging to not identify as a person. No, it's not challenging. It is impossible because you are a person. You are, by person I mean you are someone. There's a personal narrative of experience that you have, of a singularity of feeling. That's what sentient singularity is. Sentience is defined as feeling. So a sentient being is a thing that feels, I guess you could say. But yeah, sentient singularity is someone that, but you know, someone always has feelings. There's no one who doesn't have feelings. Yeah. The only thing I know with 100% confidence is that I don't know I don't really know anything. That's what this person said, to go on. And they said, if I try to remember to be humble and admit that my senses are just doing a best guesses at what exists, I am likely wrong about pretty much everything. So the idea of the singular conscious experience being an illusion doesn't seem that far-fetched at all. Comment in the chat if you see why that is impossible to be, for that to be correct. It is impossible for you to say that. It's not even you're not even able to maintain coherence in a sentence and say something like, it's challenging to not identify myself as a person. But just because you feel like a singular consciousness does not necessarily mean it's an accurate understanding. Like they say, so you're correct. It for sure feels like a single agent with a single soul, but our experience can be totally false and a total illusion. It's frightening to grapple with the ideas of things that aren't what they seem, but that's life. That's what they say. I'm not trying to be an asshole, but like, and I will say this, I appreciate the person who left this comment. I'm not going to say who they are. If you're watching this, I really appreciate you honestly engaging with me. I do think that you honestly engage with me, and I appreciate that. That's the most you can ask from anyone. I hope that you think about why you are so wrong. You're not even just so wrong. You are as wrong as you can be. Everything that you say here is built on the assumption that you exist. Like you can't say then they go on to say the one thing I know, again, I know with 100% confidence is that I don't really know anything. That is such a false statement. Like, give yourself more credit. I'll give you more credit. As I sit here and rip you, like, for the most nonsensical, statement that you could possibly make, which is to say that maybe I don't exist. Like that. Think about even how circularly impossible that is. It's a self-defeating statement. Maybe I don't exist. I have to assume it's possible. What? If that's the case, stop speaking. Like, don't say I anymore. But I also will give you a lot of credit for engaging with me honestly, and I really appreciate it. I really honestly do. I'm not just saying that. And I think you need to give yourself way more credit and stop with this like false humility of like the one thing I know with 100% confidence is that I don't really know anything. No. Understand and always assume that your perspective is limited. That's it. That means that a better statement would be the one thing that I know with 100% confidence, other than that I exist, that should be an assumption, is that I don't know everything instead of anything. And that's a totally different statement. One of them you could say is true. It's definitely true. Nobody knows everything unless they're God. And because we all have a limited perspective other than God. God is the only one who gets to see everyone at once. It's not even everything. He sees everything at once because he sees everyone at once. And it's someone that sees things. So it's beings first, beings primary, things secondary. And so, but this is why language is so important to get right, because you can also, if you get it so wrong like this, then you can't even, you defeated your entire statement if you say something like, maybe I don't exist. That's the one thing that you should know more truly than you know anything else. And I talk about the first questions and how do we approach an understanding of reality. You have to figure out, like, one day I did ask myself, I was like, I'm going to assume there is a first question. What is it? And then I realized what is the first question is the first question. And it's also the answer to the first question. So you say, if the first question is, what is the first question? The answer is, what is the first question? It is a self-answering, perfectly and entirely coherent question and answer that it's fascinating, and it makes perfect sense that it would be, that's the primary one. And then, but you need somewhere to start from. You need to know where you're beginning, and that's kind of just a circle, and so, well, there's lessons in realizing the metaphysical structure of that statement, the circular structure of that statement, the self-answering structure of that statement, and that question and that answer. you need in order to start building a world, an understanding of the world, of all that is in it, and you have to know where to start. You have to have the foundation. And so that's going to be the second question, I assumed, because I figured out that the first question doesn't give me that answer that I'm looking for necessarily, at least obviously. And it's kind of built into the circuitous nature of like that question and answer of the first question and first answer. But I said, okay, well, now I'm going to assume there's a second question. What is the second question that somebody can ask? And I think the second question is, what is the truest thing that I know? And again, it's kind of built into the question. The answer is kind of built into the question. I am. That's the answer. What is the truest thing that I know? The answer is I am. It's again a perfectly circular like question and answer. That it's a self-answering question. That's what I'll say. It's a self-answering question, which is again fascinating, but it's a little different. It's not a perfect circle anymore. It's like a little bit. It's got structure to it now. That has differentiation. The answer is not the same exact statement as the question itself, like in the first question, but it is still self-answering. The information that you need to answer the question is in the question. You don't need outside information. And that should be the truest thing that you know is that I am. The truest thing I know is that I am. So you can't even say the one thing I know with 100% confidence is that I don't really know anything. And try and use that as like a statement of why you should assume that you don't exist for some reason. That doesn't make sense. Again, please comment in the chat or in the comments if you get what I'm saying, because I really think it's very important. It's not even very important. It's probably the most important thing that you could, get right is the truest thing that you can possibly know. You should know that you know it. Yeah, everything else is built on it, actually. That just like every statement that he makes is built on that assumption. That's why every statement is defeated here by his proposition. And is defeated, really, it's defeating of his proposition. I don't even want to say it's defeated by his proposition. It's defeated by his proposition if his proposition is right. But there's no evidence of that. He's just saying, well, maybe there's more. Maybe we're wrong. It's like, well, if you can't even make any statement about anything that we could possibly know without the assumption built into the statement that you are someone, then maybe you should assume that is truth that should be assumed always. Like, yeah, it's critical. Yeah. I don't know. I appreciate that person though. Good for them for having an honestly engaging with me online. That's a very rare thing for people to do these days. So, but he should give himself more credit. There's definitely, there are things that he knows with 100% certainty, or he should assume that he knows with 100% certainty is really what you need. That's the more accurate way of saying it is. What I must assume is this, it's like I must assume that to know this. There are some things that you must assume to know, based on how you got that answer, and you should not assume that you don't know, even if it's going against every experience that you have and the logic of language itself. So I know that was a big side tangent. Okay, let's see. So you're real then? Yes. If I know I'm real. I don't know if you're real. You don't know if I'm real, but you know you're real if you are. If you are someone, you are real. You are the realest thing. You are the definer of what is real, you could say. But I don't even like the term real. Like, that's what I'm saying, is that it's unnecessary. I think that you can just say it's true, like, I'm trying to think of an instance where saying, is this real, is like it's a very useful term. It probably exists because the term exists, but reality is kind of like a term that isn't, it is unnecessary when discussing fundamental existence, like the truth of fundamental existence. Because it's built into, it's just assumed that is reality, I guess. I just think it's a terribly redundant term. It's unnecessary. It kind of implies that there is something that is not real on the fundamental level, and that's not possible by definition, I would say, at least in the way that I'm thinking of it. And of those words, I mean, I know I'm not saying that I'm wrong, or that I'm thinking about it in a unique way, but I'm just saying that the way that I'm using the words like fundamental existence, which I think is a decently simple enough concept, it's baked in that, like, if something exists, it's real. Like, you know what I'm saying? Like, if something exists, it's real. So we're talking about what we assume there is an existence. What is it? So, like, you can't say, is existence real or something, or is reality truly real? It just doesn't make sense. But you can say, like, is that a real Louis Vuitton bag, or is that a knockoff? That, I guess you could say, but it's whether or not something's real or fake. It's like, but really what you say is that a Louis Vuitton bag, or is it a knockoff? Like, you don't even need to say a real Louis Vuitton bag. If it's a Louis Vuitton bag, it is by definition it's Louis Vuitton. That's just the brand that I could think of that I imagine people, probably one of the ones that the people make fakes of a lot, but I know they do, but I'm not a fashion person. So let's go to the next clip. And then we go to the chat first. The unreal. It depends on what you mean by you. I don't know what else you could mean by you. That's like improved. The unreal has no existence. The real never ceases to be. Seers of truth know the nature of the real and the unreal. Bhagavad Gita. I know what that is, but I never really read it when it's written out. Yeah, I would agree with that. But I said this in like the very first video I uploaded to this channel about my models. Is I said something like, non-existence by definition doesn't exist. Existence by definition exists. So therefore it is real. Non-existence isn't possible. It's not even not real. Like, for something to not be real implies that it's fake, but that means that it's like, it exists, but it isn't what it seems. It's just not a term that makes sense to use in discussions of fundamental truth. How does Descartes know that the I who thinks is not Pascal or someone else dreaming he is Descartes? This is not a good question. It's just not. We have a narrative of self, and they get into this in a minute. We're going to look at it in a clip. What is the self? It is a continuity of feeling and experience. That's what it is. And I would say it's a continuity of feeling. And to some degree, it is a continuity of experience as well, but it's definitely a continuity of feeling. So have you ever had a dream that you weren't you? Like, I mean, I get it. Like, I had a dream I was a dog once, but that doesn't mean I'm a dog. But the point is that it was still me in the dream. Like I was among my family, it was just a nonsensical dream as like a 5-year-old that I was also a dog, but I had the same grandparents and parents and siblings. It wasn't that I was dreaming that I was someone else. I had a different body, but I didn't have a different self. I don't think that we can dream that we are different self. We can dream that we are in a different place, that we have more money than we thought, that we can fly, that we are a dog, that we are, whatever. But like it's still you as that. It's not you. I don't think that you can dream and truly be through the eye, kind of like feel that you're someone else. I don't think that that's possible, actually. I've never done it, and I have 35 years of experience dreaming. Almost. It's my birthday. Not tomorrow, the next day, this weekend. So then I will have 35 years of experience dreaming. Probably less. I don't sleep as much as most people, and as much as I should. So, but still, 35 years. Does Descartes acknowledge the concept of experience a cognitive process that doesn't originate from the same place you observe? I think that this is a language issue. Asking questions like that. How does maybe not, but how does Descartes know the I who thinks is not Pascal dream? I've been here with you for a while, and I'll tell you, the reason I'm about done listening is because you talk to yourself for hours and give 4 minutes of chat time. I'm sorry. I will say I'm actually sorry about that. This is, I think out loud on these, if you haven't noticed, then you haven't watched the channel, but I think out loud, and this is part of where I do it. And I will say, I don't give enough. You are right, though. I don't give enough time to the chat. And I do get lost in my own thoughts a little bit sometimes, too often. And so I will try and be better, but not telling you should stay, do what you want. But you are right. And I apologize. Paulina and the baby, much love. But I'm done. I'm sorry. Well, who gives a shit about Louis bag? I'm here for quantum entanglement. Well, what about it? Like, what do you want? What do you want to talk about it? But we're going to it. But my point about that was, in case it was just the importance of language and why some of these words are trapping of even our ability to think about things like quantum entanglement properly. Like our physics is stalled partially because our language is fraying. It is decohering, is unraveling. And that doesn't allow you to construct on and build new things, because they have to be built on solid concepts that already exist. we're going to get into we're going to look at this clip next. I will say, I'm trying to not get so lost, and you are right though that I do that sometimes, but also like know what you're getting. If you've been here for a while, then you should also know what you're getting. But here, this is what we'll talk about. Next, to your point.
From, well, anything that you do, let's suppose that's some consequence of psychology, which is some consequence of neurology, and then chemistry or biochemistry to then chemistry to then physics. Okay, so physics is supposed to be seen as the most foundational. How do you view that whole line of thinking?
Yeah, I tend to think of physics as the most foundational science. Yes, I do. It doesn't mean that I think all the sciences are necessarily reducible to physics. That I think is an open question in many cases. But it is certainly the most basic one in the sense that different sciences will draw on other sciences. All of them eventually have to draw on physics. So, for instance, in biology, you will draw on chemistry, but in chemistry, you will draw on physics as well, you see.
So what's the difference there between being foundational and being reducible to?
If you could translate, say, a chemical theory or a biological theory entirely into the language of physics, of contemporary physics, then that would be a reduction. There is no practical way to do that. And there are many theoretical objections to the idea that you can. So, as I say, it is in many cases an open question. For example, when people talk about how phenomenological thermodynamics is reducible to statistical mechanics, well, they are talking not about a literal translation. They're talking about approximations that an agreement in the respects that they want. So a reduction, it's a bit of an idealistic aim.
This is what I mean. This is why I talk about, like, I'm using a metaphor, maybe a not so great metaphor of like a Louis Vuitton bag and whether or not it's a real or knockoff. I'm saying even the existence of this term real is it can throw off your ability to construct the right questions in science. Like he said, and all of our sciences are built on each other. And Curt asked, is physics the most foundational science? I don't know if it is or not. I don't know where the line is between metaphysics and physics, really. I would say that metaphysics is more foundational than physics, and that you can't actually understand quantum entanglement without a proper understanding of metaphysics. But here's the critical point that I was making earlier: is our metaphysics are constrained by within the scientific pursuit, which is a collective pursuit. It's not. Yes, it's individualistic, but it's also like it's communicative. It's done in society. Is constrained and constructed on top of language and a linguistic structure that makes sense and that is coherent, and that allows us to formulate terms and new terms that actually communicate concepts that we're trying to properly communicate, like quantum entanglement. So when we say things like, well, what is quantum entanglement? What's going on there? And if you're not able to figure that out, and it doesn't seem to match up with what is currently your current understanding or your current assumption, you should assume that there's something wrong with not just your physics, but your metaphysics, because that's what your physics is built on. And maybe not even just your metaphysics, but your linguistics, your terminology, and how you are speaking about things. Maybe the word real should not exist in the conversation about things that are assumed to be real, like fundamental existence. $10. I think sometimes you degenerate yourself. You're wise and keep it on point. You'll keep the audience if you stay on track and also read chat. Maybe have the wife watch the chat for good ones. Thank you very much for the $10. I really appreciate it. And I appreciate the honest criticism, because it was correct. And I always, every time I remember the chat, just so you know, I regret that it took me that long. And it makes me feel like cringe on the inside. But I'm going to try and be better about it. I don't know how, my wife is in another room, so I don't know how much she can address the chat. She's always the first comment though. So like, shout out to my biggest fan. You obviously have an impoverished dream life. There are more things in heaven and earth than are dreamt about in your philosophy. I have an impoverished dream life? No, I don't think so at all. Tell me in the chat about the time that you dreamed that you were someone else, but it was you as someone else, if I imagine correctly. It wasn't you can't dream that you are truly someone else, because then you wouldn't exist in your dream anyways. It just doesn't make sense. Yes, you can dream that, oh, in my dream I was actually a pirate and hundreds of years ago. That's fine. But that it was you having the experience in the dream is my point. And when you wake up, it's you that remembers the dream. There is a continuity of feeling. I'm still trying to grasp the concepts of observer consciousnesses being separate from cognitive processes. I think that the problem is cognitive, but I don't really think that necessarily you're wrong. There might not be a separation, honestly. Like, I say a being is a structure / process. That's why it's a being. It's ing. It's like, it is a continuous kind of, it is an active thing, not it's not inanimate or static. It is an active thing, which is, when you say I'm jumping, it's like I am active. That is like an action. It's acting. It's not even just act. It's like implies that it is continuous or present. It's not just past. Being is continuous and present always. There is the only time that you cannot escape your present. Your present moment is always your current moment is always your present moment, or it is always a present to you. Like that is, so you exist in an ever-present state, and that continuity of feeling, that continuousness it's built into the term being. You are a being. A being is someone. And a thing is something. So when people say, when in the beginning of this, when Bas says,
I'm not a thing. I'm not a thing of any kind.
this.
I'm not a physical thing. I'm not an abstract thing. I'm not something supernatural. I'm not a thing, period. I'm not a thing. I'm not a thing of any kind. I'm not a physical thing. I'm not an abstract thing. I'm not something supernatural. I'm not a thing, period.
This is very right, but it's also not enough. Okay, and I've talked about this before on here, where people say you have to get to a place of no thingness there, and that's like true enlightenment or understanding of reality is that there is no thing. In the Matrix, he's like there is no spoon. It's not the spoon that bends, it's you, basically. And the term is the terminology or the language that is used there is actually wrong. When he says there is no spoon, the spoon by definition is how you experience a spoon, and use a spoon. It's you can't say there is no spoon. That defeats you. It is, again, when you dig into the logic behind it, what it would imply. It is self-defeating, even though it's not really about the self. It is still self-defeating if you take it to its logical conclusion. So you can't say the spoon, there is no spoon. You have to understand where the definition and perspective of the spoon comes from. So, it's when you say, I'm not a thing of any kind, this is not enough, because there's no positive statement about what is. It's just about what isn't. Okay. And you can't build on what isn't. You only build on what is. And this is why I can't stand this statement, even though I know what he's trying to say. But it took me actually a really long time to figure out what people were trying to say when they were saying this to me, because most of them are not actually as coherent as even Bas is. He says, I am not a thing of any kind. I am not a thing. It's what a positive way of expressing what is as it relates to, kind of what he's aiming at is, I am a being. Okay. I am a being. I am someone, and someone is a being. Someone is a being. Every someone is a being. They are something that exists and is active. To be is to exist. To being is to be moving, active, and it's a constant state of action and while existing, an active thing. But an active existence. That's awesome. So this is so important and so fascinating to me, and I apologize if it's not fascinating to you. But I mean, I don't know if I apologize for it, but I think it's critical. I wouldn't get on here and talk about it endlessly for, week after week if I didn't really think it was worth putting everything into. Okay. Language. But Michael, Pip, and thank you. Again, for the criticism, the true criticism, and for the gift. Language is a barrier, but as logical beings, we can work terms to understand new physics. Understand new physics. Yes, I agree. Thank you for discussing. Always enjoy. When I'm able to listen. Thank you. I'm trying to be better about the chat, guys, and better about time. I have the compatibility of lucid dreaming, the capability of lucid dreaming since I was young. It's a control of a fake dream. I've had this. I've been able to have lucid dreams before too, and the best one was when I was in college. I realized I was dreaming, and that I was asleep. I was like, wow, I'm dreaming. And then I was like, if I'm dreaming, then I can maybe do like things that I can't normally do. And I was like, maybe I could fly. And I tried to fly and I could float. Like I wasn't like Superman, but it was kind of like balancing on a balance beam is how it felt. And I was able to hover, a few feet to maybe like 10 feet above the ground. And it was the most fun I've ever had in a dream ever. And the whole time I knew I was dreaming. And it's funny because it really reminds you of the Matrix, where it's like, it's not the spoon that bends, it's you. And once you realize that there is no spoon, then you can actually move the spoon. Even though I don't like the way that is said. Things do exist, but they are dependent and perceived by, they are within the perceptions and definitions of beings. That's what I will say. They are constructed and contained within the definitions and perspectives of beings. They do not exist absent an observer. There is nothing that exists absent an observer. That would imply that existence is fundamentally something that is not animated. And again, that assumption is self-defeating by just thinking about your own existence. It's just, takes the right context to think about that. I have but yeah, lucid dreaming. I wish I was able to do it more. I've only been able to do it a few times that were noteworthy, and only that one time was like really good. It was awesome. I could, but notice like there was still like this continuity of feeling like I wasn't able to do the feelings that I was experiencing were familiar. I felt like I was balancing on a bicycle or on a balance beam or something, like in my flying / floating. It wasn't like I was doing something that and feeling something that I had never felt before. There was no new feeling you know, like if you were actually Superman or Homelander or whatever, like flying like that, like they do, is not something that you have much experience with unless you are a fighter pilot for the Air Force. Like you just don't. They actually do. But then they maybe, if they're having lucid dreams, like maybe they would be more likely to have a dream of being Superman and flying through clouds and things like that. With an kind of like a feeling that made sense to what they were perceiving in their dream. Like they would feel G's, they would feel wind, like maybe not. But my point is like, it's just so far removed from our experience. And even when I was doing something in my dream that I'm not able to do in my lucid dream, I was still experiencing a familiar feeling. I could convince you otherwise, but we would need to have a live dialogue. You are obviously not tracking subtle points via chat. I am trying. Sorry if I missed something. I have 59 years of experience dreaming, and nearly every night I dream that I'm someone other than the one I feel myself to be waking up. Or is it that you just dream that you're in a different circumstances than you are when you wake up? That's not the same as being a different person. Because there's still like memories and traumas and feelings and everything that comes from the experience that has been your life that is built into that experience in that dream. It's not, I don't think you are actually someone else. You just are in a different circumstance, which that's not a different person. You know, if you get knocked out and you wake up in a different place like that, you're not a new person. You are still you. Even if they legally changed your name or something like while you were asleep, like it doesn't matter. I'm still trying to grasp. Okay. The real, by definition, is that which endures eternally. Yeah, but I just don't like the term. I think that it implies that there's something that is not real, that is simultaneously coexists with it. Like you can't have the term real without the term fake. But you can have the term existence without the term non-existence. You know, they're not dependent. One of them is dependent on the other, but they are not codependent in their relevance, if that makes sense. Thank you for it. Okay. Being versus doing. Doing is what you do. Being is what you are. You can't, doing is something that you can, like, sometimes you're doing, sometimes you're not doing. But being is something you're always being. You are always being a being. You are not always doing something, no matter what it is. But you are always being a being. It's kind of like this, you can't even escape it. You can, even the fact that you can't say, I'm always doing the doing. I am always doing a doing. You can't say that. That doesn't seem to make sense. But you can say, I am always being a being. And it makes perfect sense. It's there. That means that there's this kind of self-contained nature to that concept that isn't there with the term like doing or even thing. You know, doing is like an action. Thing is a concept, really, and being is someone. No. Okay, so let's go to the next clip. Now that we've addressed the chat. Thank you to everybody who's watching. Please hit the like button. Okay. This next clip is about what, science.
before we outline what is scientific realism, in order for you to counter that with scientific anti-realism.
Well, but that's exactly the question that divides the realist and anti-realist.
Real quick, just notice Curt perfectly set up this question. He's like, what is science? First, we need to understand what is science. And then because we need to know, we need to have a definition for the term science before we can actually even try and define scientific realism. And then, after that, scientific anti-realism, because you have to then define scientific anti-realism based on the definition of the term scientific realism, because that comes prior, I think. And kind of, we'll see. But then they're all both built on the having a definition of science. So again, that's why I stress these things. But Curt did a great job there. With the order.
When I was studying, as a graduate student, one of my teachers was Wilfrid Sellers, main scientific realist of the day. And my impression was that there was a total focus on the products of science, the theories that the scientists come up with. But science is an activity, it's an enterprise. And what defines a human enterprise is the aim, the goal, the telos, as they say. So I thought that the way the question should be asked was, what is the aim of the scientific enterprise? And the only way to answer it would be to look at what the scientists actually do when they are evaluating each other. And it always comes down to empirical tests. If a theory has no empirical implications, very soon they regard it as mere metaphysics. If it does have empirical implications, they ask for what are the experiments that will tell us which way to go. So I proposed that the aim of science, the way to define science is by its aim. And I propose that the aim is to give us empirically adequate theories that work on the empirical level. And my teacher, Wilfrid Sellers, had totally different answers. His answer was that it aims to give us literally true theories about what there is in detail, and to explain. For him, the aim of the enterprise of knowledge was to be in a position where you can explain what you have. And so that's where that's where the discussion began for me.
Are most scientists scientific realists, or they think of themselves as scientific realists?
Well, by my definition, a scientific realist is someone who believes that the aim is to produce literally true theories about what there is, with nothing added, nothing lost. Okay. I think that most people, when they ask if they are scientific realists, they think what you mean is, do you believe that the current scientific theories are true? Right? And some scientific realist philosophers make that part of their position, the belief that our current best theories are true, maybe with some approximation, right? Now, you don't have to be a philosopher to believe that theories are true, right? I mean, that's, you believe or you don't believe, that's fine. The question is, what is the criterion of success for these theories? Right? If they fail empirically, they fail. And I say if they succeed empirically, they succeed. That's what science is.
Why are you considered to be a scientific anti-realist?
Oh, because succeeding on the empirical level does not imply truth. A theory will introduce many extra things that are not directly measurable, right? Many quantities in a theory in physics specifically can only be measured via some theoretical equations in your calculations. So you have direct measurements, but then a theoretical quantity is one that can only be measured by a theory-guided measurement, right? And success on the empirical level is success with respect to the direct measurements. So that logically leaves open the possibility that, in fact, the theory is not true about what else it is. And that's the anti-realist position.
As much as I think like Bas is a great thinker, this is something I very much disagree with him on. But I also don't agree with the scientific realist. As he's defining them either. It's the language that's wrong. And for one, you don't ever want to have to hold the perspective or the position of an anti-ideology ever. I've talked about this many times, maybe not recently, but it is not constructive. And you need to have a sort of positive statement about what is in order to actually have to convey information of any kind, really, like that is true, that is actual information. And so this is an example is like, and it changes it changes everything. It changes how you are able to approach a goal, how you are able to define and perceive a goal, even in in everything from science to politics to philosophy to theology to everything. You don't want to have an anti-ideology. There is a difference between being an anti-fascist or calling yourself an anti-fascist and being a libertarian, even though you would think that they would have the same goal. It's like, well, they both are like believe in freedom, but no, one of them by like the term itself is against tyranny. That's what it means. It is primarily against tyranny. There is no, you could say maybe it's secondarily pro-freedom, but it is primarily against tyranny. Whereas the other one, libertarian position, would be their primary goal they're pro-freedom. They believe in freedom, whereas the other person believes in destroying tyranny, and primarily, and secondarily maybe believes in freedom, maybe, but maybe they haven't even got that far though. But probably most likely have not in their thinking. But if you are pro-liberty, then you are secondarily or implicatively or emergently anti-tyranny. But you're not primarily anti-tyranny. You're anti-tyranny because you're pro-liberty, but you're pro-liberty first. That's the goal. And that's why people who call themselves anti-fascists and people who call themselves libertarians usually handle things very differently and have very different goals in politics. It is constraining of what you perceive. Your language is constraining of what you can conceive, and that's huge. That's what you can think about, what you can imagine, what you can set as the goal, what you can want. Like it limits what you want, what you can want. Your language, and so you don't want to have ever have an anti-ideological position. It's not constructive. It's always destructive. Only. And because it's built into the logic of the language being used itself. So while I don't agree with the way what scientific realists would actually assert, which is that our scientific theories or science is about like telling us what is real about the world, truly fundamental about the world. I don't agree with that. I agree with actually Bas that science about the goal of science. Science is to give us empirically adequate theories. It's about giving us tools, models that we can use to make predictions in a given circumstances about the world that we live in, and particularly about the things in the world that we perceive in the world. And it's because you can't test for some oneness. I can't prove that my wife exists. I assume she does, but I have faith that she does, and I hope that she does, but I don't know. It could be a sim, NPC, sim character, but I don't think that makes logical sense with my with things, other things that I can know about the world. But I can't disprove my existence either, as I stated earlier. So that means that you can't falsify the existence of a self, and you can't prove the existence of a self. I can't prove my existence to you, and you can't prove my existence to you, but you can't falsify your own existence, and nor can I falsify your existence. And so we're in this conundrum where people will say that's not part of science anymore. And the issue is that if science is in any way relevant to having an understanding of having any kind of understanding of anything, which of course it is, it must be built on a foundational set of universal assumptions, because it is a collective endeavor, science, as I said earlier. Like it is an externalization of the thinking process. Like if you just think through things and you never voice them to somebody else, and you never test them in different circumstances, and it's just in your head, like that's not science. But I would say that's like philosophy. Maybe philosophy is communicated, but requires like speaking. But science requires like speaking to someone and communicating a concept or a model, and making a prediction, and looking for a proof of it, or for instances in which it is falsified. But that model is defined by the context in which it was created, and by the context, it is contextualized by the goal of its creation in the first place. And so we've kind of lost that in science. So I agree with Bas on what the goal of science is, and that it is this collective endeavor to produce empirically adequate models, and that allow for prediction power. But the issue with incorporating consciousness, sentience is a better term, or a study of the self, is that it operates in a different paradigm, not one of falsification and proof, but one of constant confirmation, and no ability to falsify at all, but no ability to prove to anyone else. You don't need to prove your own existence to yourself. You are confirmation of your own existence. Stephen Wolfram said this. He's like, mathematics which is really metaphysics, same thing, but he used the term metamathematics, is not about, and in a theory of everything context, it's not about, you're not trying to prove or falsify. You're not seeking proof or falsification. You're seeking constant confirmation. And he's right. And that's because that's all you can do. He's just wrong about what is fundamental, but he doesn't think it's someone. But I talked to him about it at a conference at MIT. I did a live stream about it after the event. So I actually was able to get a clear answer from him, make sure I understood him properly. But he has got a lot of other things right, and one of them is that. But I don't think you can understand really why that is true unless you understand that someoneness is fundamental, and it's also personal. Like I can't prove myself to you, my existence to you, and I can't prove your existence to myself. What do we do if all of science and language and sense making is built on that, but it doesn't follow the same constraints as what we've kind of defined science as having? And the issue is that you have these two ideas right now, which is like scientific realism, which is that science is about figuring out what is true, and not about figuring out a model that allows for us to make predictions about the physical world. And there are very much contrasting perspectives. And if you believe that the goal of science is to tell you what is true, but it is defined, but is also like what is considered true science, aka what could be potentially true and what should be assumed or entertained as possibly being true, must pass the falsification and provability test, then the truest thing that you can possibly know is no longer part of science, and the context of all of our sense making is no longer considered real, and that's a big problem. And it's kind of a definite, like a rippling issue that comes from defining science as the pursuit of truth, not the pursuit of maybe truth in a specific context, which is a model that, is empirically accurate. Yeah, this is a big difference. And it's led to so many issues. Like I got into a discussion or a debate with a zoologist that I know last week about like what is a species, and like it was like it had led to like rippling argument about the morals of like different species, like of crossbreeding different like fish and stuff in captivity and birds, and like making new guppies and stuff like and it basically just how we define the term species is not what we used to. Now there is no definition anymore. It used to mean two species that can't produce fertile, healthy offspring. Or two animals that they're separate species if they can't produce fertile, healthy offspring. So like maybe they can't produce offspring, or maybe they can produce an offspring, but it's like sterile, or it's often got health problems that basically make a stable population impossible to establish, like ligers or something like that. But then there's mules that are sterile, and there's like I don't know, a gorilla and a dog cannot make a hybrid. I don't think so. But this is species, if it's not about predicting something in the physical world, and you kind of get away from that, then it actually kind of erases the relevance of science, and which is its truth. That's what it gives it any power, is its relevance. And if species is just the definition of species can change every week, and or it doesn't have a clear definition anymore, then what's the point of having the term? It's like it's irrelevant to try and find new species or try and classify. It erases the entire field of taxonomy. I mean, it's just like crazy how self-destructive it is. You can't have science like that. Scientific realism, as it is defined by Bas here, is a nonsensical position. He's right. But I don't like the label that Bas is using, even though his perspective about what science is, his definition is correct. I agree with his definition. I would not call myself a scientific anti-realist. I don't know what I would call myself, but it wouldn't have anti in it. That's for sure, in the term, and we should avoid it. Okay. In dreams, I have different memories, different names, different citizenship, different hopes, different fears, and those of the person I exist as in waking life. Yes and no. You wake up, and who has those memories? Like you, of the dream. And, I can think about myself right now as somebody, as having a different name, living in a different country, living in a different time, having a different job, being a different gender, being a different race, being a different height. I mean, it doesn't matter because it's still my experience. It's that allows for that conceptualization to be generated, and also holds that that conceptualization in my memory afterwards. So I don't think that, I think we are conflating the self here again. And just remember, the self is, as Bas said, it's not a thing. It's a being. It's not a name. It's not a nationality. It's not a time that you live. It's not even a gender. It's not, or sex, I guess. It's not any of these things. It is someone, not something. It's not defined by anything. Things are defined by beings, not the other way around. The goal of science is not truth. but just the production of coherent models of the way matter operates. Exactly. Truth, like goodness and beauty, is the object of philosophy, not science. Yes, but also that's not enough. Notice I'm trying not to say yes and no. Like, I probably do that sometimes, but I don't think that that's like actually correct. That's like kind of self-defeating and nonsensical. But yes, but that's not enough. That's the right way to say that. Because they're connected. They like philosophy is not. If that's true, it means that science. I'm just saying that if philosophy is the study of those things, then it is just as much connected, and if not more connected to all the rest of the sciences as any of the sciences are to themselves. Like biology to physics is not actually as connected even as biology to philosophy, and physics to philosophy, because philosophy would be the that which we understanding that which is the ever-present truths would be like what's going on? Did I lose the stream? Okay, no. Okay. Okay, I see what happened. I moved the cursor. If you don't know, if you don't stream, then you don't know. YouTube changed everything on the back end the last couple weeks. Everything about how you set up the stream, everything is totally different. And not even totally different in the last couple weeks. This tonight, when I went to set up this stream, was totally different than it was when I went to set up my last stream, which was 2 or 3 weeks ago. And when I went to set up that one, it was totally different than the week before. The week before, it was the same way as it had been for a while. But during my last stream, they changed everything. And then during this, and right now for this stream, they changed everything again. And it's very confusing. So I have like the behind the scenes chat and like video showing, and it doesn't look like normal. So if I look confused, that's why. But yeah, this is, so I agree with Bas on what science is to some, but we also need to recognize that there is a foundational thing that there is a metaphysics that we must assume, or philosophy that we must assume, that we can't help but assume, actually, that we need to collectively recognize as it within our sciences as true, even though it's impossible for us to prove or falsify it to each other. It is the fact that it is constantly confirmed and confirmed and inescapable by every single person in the world is evidence of like it needs to be incorporated into any universal model. Like I said with our watches, like what's the point of having a watch if other people's watch is set to a totally different time of yours? If all of us just set our watches to whatever time we want, and it's all different. It's not like we're all synced up where my 12 o'clock is also your 12 o'clock PM, or at least, my 12 o'clock Central's time is everybody's 12 o'clock Central time. It might not be your 12 o'clock Eastern, but it's your 12 o'clock Central. Then there's no point in time keeping and watches and anything anymore. And same thing goes with science. Science is about like communicating and logging and building on the discoveries of others. And so it requires multiplicity of someone's in order to even have any purpose. You don't need a model about how the world works. Truly, that is like defined and everything, and in any kind of transcribable or translatable way if you're never going to, if nobody else is going to use it but you, like you just, I know that if you don't need a Punnett square. If you know that what happens if, different pea plants that you have are cross-pollinated, what the results will be based on experience. You don't need a Punnett square model to help communicate what you've learned to others. There's no model necessary. It's just, you just know. Which science, if it can be even like learned in society outside of just personal experience, which is, I don't know what that you could call it science, but it's not. I wouldn't. Maybe it's just you experimenting, but if you never tell anybody else and you don't what you're doing, then I don't really know if it's science. Yeah, I mean, that's a very different definition, that than just it is how we, understand and the truth. It is the truth. Like if the goal of science is to understand the truth, it means that anything that is accepted as science is truth. And that the thing about that is that it's not that it's not true. It's that it's limited. Is a proton, like, are atoms made of protons and neutrons? Or I don't even want to say that. Like, I'm trying to think of a better model. Are protons and neutrons made of quarks? That's probably a better model. If you understand sentient singularity theory, then you know why that's the case, because I think that protons and neutrons are sentient beings, and I don't think that quarks are sentient beings. So one of them is a model. The other one is a model, but there's also like, I think that someone actually exists there too. We just call them a hadron, but it's like calling you an animal. It's like you are an animal, but or you're embodied as within an animal, or as an animal, you could say. But that's not you are an animal. It's like you are a someone, but this is like if our scientific models is just assumed to be like foundational truth, and you say something like, well, a hadron is made of quarks, then what are you actually saying? If that's not if that model doesn't even have the goal of just predicting, like making physical predictions, then it's kind of pointless, because it doesn't actually communicate anything other than, some type of prediction pattern. Because it doesn't tell you what the nature of a proton or a neutron is, or of a quark. You need a foundational model that's like, no, a proton is, and again, you can't prove this stuff, which is what makes it hard. And when it's this foundational, it's like, I can't prove to you that a proton or a neutron is a sentient being. I can show you why I think that, and why a model that I've put forward predicts that. But the problem is I can't actually prove it. And I can use it to use my model to make predictions that I have about all kinds of things, including naked mole rats, as I was talking about earlier. I predicted a caste in naked mole rats existing that I didn't know existed, and I looked it up, and it turns out that they have actually observed this caste. And but that doesn't prove to you that hadrons are sentient. It just proves that there's other aspects of my model that for some reason did allow me to make that prediction, and that turned out to be observably true. We can't observe whether or not protons and neutrons are sentient, just like I can't observe whether or not you are sentient. And that's the issue, is we need a proposal for a model of sentience and of the nature of what is existence itself foundationally, that and the structure of it, that would allow for us to make predictions in other things, but isn't able to actually be proven in its foundational like core assertion, which is that, you know, what is sentient, what structures we perceive are sentient and which ones are not. This is the issue with what is like I don't know where philosophy ends and science begins. I don't think there is a line, actually. I think that you can't have science without like philosophy or metaphysics or whatever you want to call it, even theology, cosmology. They are, I still think it matches up with a lot of, I don't think that the falsification, the provability definers are requirements for science. That's what I will say. I think that where the goal, that all you can do anyways is prove, even on a non-foundational like theory, is confirm a model's the prediction based on a model in a certain context, and that's it. Like it's because the models themselves are so limited in what they're actually saying. Like what your standard model does not say what a quark is. It just says, you know, it just gives a structural pattern that allows for us to make predictions. It doesn't say what a proton or a neutron is. It doesn't say what a cell, our biological models do not say what a cell is. Say these are the parts of a cell, of some cells, these are the parts of other cells though. And, but what is it? It's someone. Like that's probably, but you can't prove that. And, but you need a model that like makes certain assumptions about these structures in order to actually understand what any of them are. And like truly. And if sentience is fundamental, which you must assume that it is because it's the truest thing that you know about the nature of reality or of existence, is that it's sentient. You don't even know if rocks aren't sentient. I don't think they are, but like you don't know, and you can't prove it. But you can't not have it constantly confirmed to you that the nature of existence is sentient. It's constantly confirmed to you every moment of that you experience in your existence. It is confirmed. So I don't know. I will say, like, I don't know how the best to like, is this science? Is this philosophy? Is this metaphysics? I think that honestly, the issue is that part of what is generally accepted about science is that it must be falsifiable or provable. And that's almost like worse than defining it as than some people thinking it's defined as just the truth. It helps us it has a goal of helping us understand or of describing what we can understand about what is true. But that doesn't mean that all these models aren't limited either. They are absolutely limited. I don't have the answer, but I do know the problem. That I will say. And I guess maybe I know the answer, but I don't know how it like, that doesn't mean it can actually happen, you know? How do you get everybody to get on the same page, much more the same page on what science is, if our language is unraveling? And how do we get on the same page on what is required of anything that is kind of taken seriously within the scientific conversation? If like the people that are, you know, being the most credentialed in this conversation and whose voices are kind of boosted by the system, or by the system of our society, of our institutions at least, not by, you know, the cosmos or God system, but of our institutions are people who, by kind of inevitability, are just kind of accept what is already institutionally known and have gone through the process of getting those credentials, and that it comes with just a lot of memorization and not as much like action. I don't know. I don't have the answer to that one, but I do know that God is working on it. That I have faith. I don't even know, but I have faith that God is working on it. I don't have faith in God's existence. I know God exists. I have faith in his assistance, even on this. Self is neither a thing nor a being. It's an identity. Yes, it is. It's an identity. It is someone. It's an identity. Only one choice can ever be made. Multiple works theory says every possible choice has been made. Multiple works theory says every possible choice has been made. Therefore, God knows every choice we ever liked. We ever liked make. I don't know what you mean to say there. Well, God knows every choice that we make as soon as we make it. There isn't anything else he needs to know. To say he knows every choice that we make before we make it, it means we don't make choices. And I think we do. I don't think we make as many choices actually as most people assume. I think every time you choose what to eat is basically almost always not a choice. It's just what's around, intersecting with what you're craving. And none of that is up to you. But you can make a choice about what you eat, but it's not going to be based on like what you like and what you can afford and what is around ever. It's going to be based on like what you think is right and what you think is wrong. That's when you would have a choice in what you eat. But yeah, there's nothing to know about us beyond our choices. God can't know our choices before we make them. He might have a good predictive ability on which one we're likely to make, but he doesn't actually know which one we are going to make because you can't. He knows exactly which one we do make as soon as we make it. And so that brings me to my next clip. And then I'm going to check the time because I know I rambled and we went to the weeds a bit in the beginning of this. And I'm trying to keep these to under 3 hours. Let me know in the chat how long this has been going because I don't know. Okay, so okay. Yeah, this is kind of what I was just talking about.
I want to understand how you see the world. Most people see the world as we have our perceptions, and they're filtered through something that generally distorts the way that the world is, and there is a fact of the matter as to how the world actually is, but we never get to see it as it is, but there is that. It's over here, and then there's our perception of it. That's the most common sort of view of the world. And of course, this view itself is a quote-unquote model, and then we can just do some infinite regress of that. But
I would even say that that's not... that is like what most people say, and I think a lot of people assume, but it's actually not correct. There is what you perceive is different from what you want, and what you understanding what you like. Your perceptions comes down to understanding the limits and the ability, the constraints and freedoms of your perceptions, what you can and cannot actually perceive, and understanding that does once again come back down to definitions. If you think that there is a right word for something, which I think that there is, and it's not just a matter of choice. There's choice built. There's degrees of freedom and constraints, but there really is, I think, a best word always. And also just having language, like I said earlier, is built on that kind of assumption. Otherwise, you can't have really a collective language. But the problem is that when people say things like, yeah, we view the world with these like distortions. I don't think that that's really right. What it is that we have a limited view. not a distorted view. We have a distorted, like, we have oftentimes an incorrect assumption about that which we can't actually or do not actually perceive. But what you actually perceive, I don't think you have a distorted view of. Maybe you can have an incorrect like deduction, or like an incorrect understanding of what or you can have an incorrect assumption that is incorrect based on you having a limited perspective, but you don't have an incorrect perspective. That makes sense. You have a limited perspective, and you can have an incorrect assumption about something because it actually requires perceiving information that you don't perceive, but you don't realize that you need it. And this comes down to like relevance realization. It's like you need to understand relevance, and that comes from having a goal. And so like that's why we need science to have a goal. It can't just be goal of science is truth. No, not exactly, but you need more context there. It's not that I'm not even gonna say that's wrong. It's just like it's not enough. It's not a goal. A goal is like what do we want to do? Like, and philosophy. I said I told the story before, but there was a philosophy professor, young philosophy professor, on a Discord call that I was on with like a bunch of people, physicists and mathematicians, math PhDs and physics PhDs, and Eric Weinstein was on this call, and Tim Nguyen was on this call and everything. And then after this call ended, like if people were just like left over, and I was listening, and was this philosophy professor, and he was just going on and on and on about how people say there's, there's what was it? It was like Marx. He was like, somebody was like, what about asking him questions about Marxism? And he's like, there's actually 3 Marxes. There's not one Marx, there's 3 Marxes. And it's interesting, like, the triality of generationality in physics or something. And length with height, past, present, future. There's something about like perspective that probably is why he has said that. But regardless, there's a trialic structure that is probably just like, that's why I assume he said that. I'm not assuming he said something nonsensical, but he knew he memorized, or he knew so much of information that he had read, so much, like he was a walking encyclopedia. But encyclopedia does not have real world experience, and neither did this person when it came to philosophy, because he couldn't define it. And I was like, wait, okay, what is the definition of philosophy? And he was like, he said, if I said in like a few sentences, and he was like, if I could define philosophy in a few sentences, it wouldn't be philosophy. And he said it very smugly, like not with it necessarily. He had an accent, but I don't know what accent it was. It wasn't British, but every accent becomes a British accent. It's probably due to Hollywood, But if you're an American, every foreign accent that you can think of is British accent. But he was like, if I could define philosophy in a few sentences, it wouldn't be philosophy. And I was like, that is stupid. I was like, okay, well, what is the goal and purpose of philosophy? And because, we're talking about the goal and purpose of science here. Okay, well, what is the goal and purpose of philosophy? And I asked him, and or what is it that, what is the purpose of it? And he said, it has no purpose. So he devoted his entire professional life and his, endless amounts of, clearly has personal interest in this as well. It's not like it's just his job. Otherwise you can't have read as much and memorized as much information as he had. But he's devoted like his life to the study of that which cannot be defined and has no purpose, and isn't someone. That just seems like not a very good philosopher to me. But somebody who hasn't actually done much philosophizing, even though they have memorized the recorded philosophy of countless people who have philosophized, doesn't seem like he has done much philosophizing. But this is, philosophy is the study of, my philosophy professor in college, he didn't say it was the love of wisdom, even though I know like that's what philosophy is, the love of wisdom. I don't think that makes any, I think that it's probably more accurate within the original context to say it's the loving of the wise one. It's like the pursuit of loving the wise one. It's like the pursuit of understanding what God wants and what is good base and his goals and how we fit in that. You can't love something. You love someone. You like something. You can like something a lot. And we say, I love that all the time. So guilty of it. I say, I love this pen because I think it's just, I like it a lot. That's really, I just like it a lot. I love my wife. I choose to love my wife. She's someone. And loving is a way of acting. It's not a feeling. You can feel loved, but you don't feel love for someone. You feel loved when people love you, and when people love you, they're doing something for you. So when you say love of wisdom, it's like it doesn't really make much sense unless it's within the contextual assumption that like wisdom is known by someone, it's held by someone. It's like the pursuit of God's will. Like that's what philosophy's goal was. It seems like what its purpose was. But my philosophy professor, he defined it as the study of perspective. And so like, I think that's not a bad definition either. Actually, like I think, even though I think the original definition, if I'm given my assumption about the original definition, I think that is actually the correct. That is true about like what is the purpose of philosophy, but what is it the study of? It's the study of perspective, and the perspectives are perceived by beings, by someone's, and the most holistic and complete perspective, the only complete perspective, is the perspective held by God. And so if you're going to study perspective, that's the perspective that contextualizes everybody else's perspective. So it's linked to the pursuit of seeing the world in God's eyes, I guess, even by the definition of the study of philosophy is the study of perspective. But yeah, I mean, it has a goal. Like philosophy, the goal is like we need to figure out what is right and wrong. And we need to figure out like what do we do? What should we do? What should we try to do? And the thing is, though, is that this is the thing that is not. It's very it is assumed by everybody to be true, but it is postured by most people as not being true in public, is that there is a right and wrong. And that means that like you could figure out what is right and wrong. Probably. And you should assume that you can. And that means it's like there's a concrete quote unquote science in some ways to morals. Like that. It means like it's not a decision. And especially like what is right, not so much what is wrong. Like we all constantly talk about that's wrong. But like we don't. But what is right is what you want, and it is what most people say in public these days, which is not. not the same as it is not true. Actually, what is right is also just as true as what is wrong. In fact, it's more true because it's a positive, constructive perspective. If all you ever did was not do the things that were bad, but you never did anything constructively good, I would say that is a life wasted, and it is emergently wrong. The wrong thing to do, is to do nothing. You absolutely should do what is right, and focus on that more so than focusing on not doing what is wrong. And we see that in our world. It's unraveling in many ways. I saw this. I showed some graph that somebody shared today. Is like the amount of people who are married with kids, and families, basically. Like that is a family. As soon as you get married, you have a family, and you should try and have kids. Not everybody can, but you should try. Give God the opportunity, and if he denies it, then it's on him. But you can't be blamed at that point. But it's like there is a right thing to pursue. People will be like, oh, you shouldn't. What if somebody doesn't want kids? Like, well, what if everybody said we don't want kids anymore? It's like, welcome to a terrible world. What if somebody doesn't want to get married? Okay, well, you can very much prove that is that's wrong. That's a wrong perspective to have. Is that it's right to not get married if you don't want to get married? No, doesn't mean everybody should get married, but it shouldn't be up to you on whether or not you are the type of person who should get married or not. It would be very specific. I don't know the holistic. Maybe you're not attracted to the opposite sex. Maybe then you shouldn't get married. But that's not up to you, but we need to assume there is a right thing to do. Okay. No beings are sentient. Sentience alone is sentient. No beings are sentient? I think beings are defined by being sentient. Sentience, a being is someone, and someone has the nature of sentience and the structure of oneness. That's what I would say. The nature of a being is sentience. The foundational nature of existence itself, in the most complete and truest and most foundational way, is sentience. The structure of existence itself, in the truest, most complete, and most foundational sense, is oneness. You are someone. I am someone. God is someone. One of your cells, if they're sentient, is someone. We all have the structure of oneness. Yeah, we are I am an assembly. My body is an assembly of cells, but I am someone. I am not many. I am one. By definition. My body is composed of an assembly of many. And my sentience is stacked on top of an assembly of other sentient beings, but it is stacked on top. It is embodied by being stacked on top of an assembly of other embodied sentient beings. But it is, I am not many. I am one. And that's it. So when you're talking about fundamental existence, you have to talk about, when you say, what is it? It has a structure and it has a nature. And its nature is sentience and its structure is oneness. That's why it's Sentient Singularity Theory. Singular sentience. Singularities of sentience. Bits, I guess you could say. Quanta people who have degrees in physics are like, don't use it. what does quantity even mean? Like, that's not a physics word. Like, it's, I don't even know how helpful it is for that word to be used in the way that it is in physics. Only one choice can ever be made. You always have two choices, actually. Well, you always have a choice between two actions. Any choice has a choice between two actions. And it might seem like there's multiple options, like in multiple choice tests, but it's really two, because the constraint comes from your own mind and the definition of differentiation is this versus that. This different from that. It's inherently binary. So that's why when you do a multiple choice test, you say, well, it's definitely not that one. So it must be one of these three. And it's that out of these three, it's not that one. So it must be one of these two. And out of these two, it's not that one. So it must be that one. It's like this is a series of binary choices. It's not a quadratic choice. It's a three sets of binary choices. A triality of binary choice. But it's because language is inadequate for metaphysics. Saying what something is showed us that. Wittgenstein showed us that. However, that doesn't mean that we can't do metaphysics, just not with words. This is what I don't understand. And we're going to get to that because he talks about exactly that in this. And he says, this is why I don't like, I am against metaphysics or something. Well, I'm going to show the clip in a minute. But I think we need to have a better definition of metaphysics if that's the case. If something's not helpful, then we have the wrong definition. Okay. But this was interesting right here, this clip. I'm going to try and move quicker.
Thought. So then we could say, well, what we think of as solidity, let's just call that something with...
Yeah. Let me tell you about the discussion I had on this other show that you mentioned, Closer to Truth.
Yes.
So we had a mug, and the interviewer said, well, I would say the mug is round, but actually there are photons traveling to my eyes, and then electrical impulses going to my brain, and so there's some sort of happening in my brain that makes me say it's round. So I can't be sure that this is the truth. And I said, so you have more confidence in the theory of photons than you have in the existence and shape of this mug? And he said, yes. I said, would this also be true of the instruments in the laboratory where scientists were investigating photoelectric effects, and where they came up with the theory of photons? How are these instruments any different from this mug? How come? Do you mean that you don't trust those instruments to be what they are because you've accepted the theory of photons? Doesn't make sense. It doesn't make sense to me. So the first thing is you have to accept that what you see is real, including the instruments on your laboratory table, right? Before you start thinking that your theories tell you that it's not true.
Brilliant. Exactly. There's a hierarchy of understanding. That's why I say often, like, there is a first question. I think I deduced it. I've never actually heard anybody else besides me say that, like, there is a first question. Everybody talks about reasoning from first principles, but nobody's like, what is the first question of all questions? Not just like, how do we figure out like how to solve this problem over here? That's specific. I'm saying, like, how do we understand all of as much of existence as we can from first principles? Well, okay, maybe there's a first question, and it seems like there is, and it's, what is the first question? And its answer is, what is the first question? And there seems like there is a second question, and that is, what is the truest thing that I know? Because what else can you assume prior to what is the truest thing that I know? It's just everything's built on that. And so but that's exactly what irrelevant to what he just said is like, somebody says, well, yeah, I see that the mug is round, but really, if we were to zoom in, it's the atoms aren't even touching. And I'm only perceiving, these atoms in this structure because the photons are going into my eyes, and then electrical signals are going through my nerves to my brain, and then that's making, organizing the information. But all of this comes down to the assumption that you exist in the first place, to be the perceiver of that which your experiences, of the perceiver of the information of that which your experiences generate, which is like sensory data. Like you can't say I trust the theory of photons more than I trust eyes, because eyes were used to make the instruments that are used to measure these results in certain experiments that would imply or that would that are predicted by a theory of photons as it currently stands. And that is what I'm talking about, is like we are prioritizing secondhand information in this world, and it means we don't know, like you can't know that stuff. It is true. It's funny. I was thinking about like the whole going to the moon thing, just because it's like, I know a lot about, I do a lot of reading and stuff about like aerospace and technology. I'm a big like military and aerospace like technology nerd. But so I actually went and saw my favorite plane for the first time over the break, over Christmas break, and it's called a YF-23. It is it was the prototype competitor to the F-22 Raptor, was the YF-23 and fighter jet, and it was even cooler than the F-22, which is the coolest plane that has gone into production ever. But its competitor was even cooler, and there's two of them, and there's one in LA at a museum, and then there's one in I think Ohio at a museum. And but my point is that I know a lot about, I don't want to say I know, I have researched a lot about the technology for the vehicles that were used throughout our aerospace history. So I know, I don't want to say I know. So I have read a lot and learned a lot about what is recorded about the Mercury missions and those rockets and where those rockets came from and what they were, and the Gemini missions and what the goals of those missions were, and those rockets and what those constraints of those vehicles were and where they came from. And then the Saturn V rocket, which was the one that was, allegedly used to take us to the moon. And I was like, I have done a lot of research on this, but I wasn't there. I've never been to the moon. I've never actually seen any of those rockets launch. I have seen rockets launch, but they were SpaceX rockets. I actually saw a rocket launch with Curt Jaimungal at Mindfest when we were out to dinner afterwards. A lot of the people that were there were there was like a dinner, and we were all there, and we were outside, and all of a sudden a rocket from Cape Canaveral launched off, and we were in Florida, and it flew over us, and then I was like, oh, it's gonna stage, and people were like, what's staging? And then because it disappeared, and people were like, it's gone, and I was like, no, it's gonna stage. Just keep watching. And then all of a sudden, like, it relit, and like pieces came, were coming back, and then you could see the other part continue on. And so my understanding actually of my model, my theoretical model, that I have secondhand knowledge of, was actually able to make a firsthand prediction about a rocket. But I've never been to the moon, so I don't know we've been to the moon. I think we've been to the moon because I've thought through a lot of this tech, and I do have some predictive ability in my understanding of it, it seems. Or my predictive ability does seem to imply some degree of understanding. But I wasn't there, and I feel like we went to the moon. Actually, I don't know how I feel anymore about it, but I always used to feel like we went to the moon. Now I just know that a lot of things that people think are true are not. But I do think that we went to the moon, and I don't really care enough to have a feeling about it one way or another at this point. I think you could say I feel like we went to the moon, but so like this is how we understand things. It's like I feel we went to the moon. I think we went to the moon, but I don't know we went to the moon. But if I was Neil Armstrong and we did in fact go to the moon, he would feel that we went to the moon. He would think we went to the moon, and he would know we went to the moon. And so like this is important though. Like, and it's hard because even I'm sitting here saying I know a lot about like the Saturn V rocket, and it's like I think I do because there's a coherence to the technological tree that I've studied, secondhand. But I didn't actually build a Saturn V rocket ever, and I've never seen one in person. So do I know a lot about it, or do I think I know a lot about it? This is tough, It is like it really limits how you, but it also like frames and gives you a clear picture on like what your true understanding or even desires are. I've said on here before, I said for so long, I want to work out, but then I don't work out. My wife and I were saying this to each other. We're like, we just say that we want to work out all the time, but then we don't. And then eventually I was like, no, I figured it out. We say we want to work out, but really we want to work out. But maybe we don't want to actually work out. We just want to work out, and we don't actually want to work out. So that's why we don't work out. And she laughed and she was like, yeah, I think that makes a lot of sense. And now we have both she's really started working out, and I did start, but I went like only a couple times at this point to work out. And seriously, I can't say, I've started working out. Give me a few more weeks. But yeah, like this stuff matters. Like there's layers to it, to understanding. It's because language. Same with no beings. Same with consciousness. There are no conscious beings in the universe. Only consciousness is conscious. It doesn't make any sense to me. Though it appears that consciousness locates itself in certain forms, like humans. It's embodied in certain forms, but it is localized to on a metaphysical level to singularities of sentience. You are also inside a singularity of sentience. So that's like, it's like if a cell was sentient, and I think they are, and is inside of you, and you're sentient, then they might say something similar to you. They'd be like, well, sentience is everywhere, actually. And it's like, no, you're just inside one. It's like saying there is no forest. If you're inside a forest and you're like, there is no forest, the forest is all around. So like there isn't a single forest. It's just forest is forested, But I know that's not the best. That was I don't know how else to say it right now. But if you could back up and zoom out and actually not be in the forest anymore, then you would see that like there is a single forest. But if you're in it, then you can't see it as the singularity of it. And same thing goes with sentience. But also we have plenty of instances. Like, would you say that this is sentient? No, probably not. You can't prove it is or it isn't. I know that. But like, do you think it is? Do you feel it is? Do you think and feel that your dog is sentient, or your wife, or your child? Probably, even though you don't actually know. Only they know. But I know I'm sentient. I think I'm sentient, and I feel I'm sentient. And I think and feel that my wife is sentient. But I don't know. And I think and feel this is not sentient, but I don't know. We gotta know the limits of our ability to understand things. We've confused what we knowledge that we've memorized with understanding, and they are not the same thing. It's because language is inadequate. Philosophy cannot be defined with words because language only deals with generalities. I don't know how true that is. But maybe I kind of see what you're trying to say, I think. However, philosophy can be lived by specific philosophers who then make wise statements based on lived wisdom. Okay. I'm not going to say that's wrong. I would have probably said it differently, but it's close enough to where I think that you're onto truth. You seem to be listening to the same discussions as me. I like this Bas fella. Appreciate your synthesizing. Good. I'm glad. I had never heard of him either. I'm trying to spread this, by the way, the link to their full discussion, which I highly recommend watching always, is always linked below in every commentary that I give. And I do always recommend that you watch them. If I'm sharing and talking about it, a conversation, giving my commentary on it, it's worth watching the entire thing. Always. Even if I'm being critical. Trust needed and trust is lost. Why do I say that? Never been also. I do know motive is important. Yes, it is. Goals are contextualizing of understanding. The reason I bring that up is that I think you need to have a pretty high degree of intelligence to contemplate about any of the stuff you talk about. I don't think that's actually true. I don't know if that's true, but I think that that's not true. Once I watched this video, when I got really interested in IQ a couple times in my life. And once was after I had like my theophany that has really allowed me, I believe, to understand a lot more than I used to, and to understand the limits of what I can understand, and also my abilities to understand, or not even my abilities, but the capacity, I would say, to understand, because I don't want to put it on me. It's about perspective. I think perspective matters so much more than intelligence, because I had it all wrong on so many things. Even though I was philosophically talented, I was the best philosophy student my philosophy professor ever had, and it was the last class I ever wanted to take because I thought it was totally irrelevant to my degree. And I thought philosophy was like poetry, and I had no interest in poetry at the time either. But I had this epiphany about this. That sentience is fundamental. Basically, that leads you to God exists, and there's a purpose to things, and I was able to actually understand the world much better, and I really understood that I was really lost. And I got much better at identifying the instances that where my perspective could be limited or was limited after this. Whereas before, I had no idea what the limits of my perspective, to the point where I made some nonsensical statements. Once a coworker of mine was he was a theist, and he was I believe in an objective morality. I believe there is actually right and wrong. I would say a super subjective morality is a more accurate term. I don't like objective morality. Objects are inanimate things. Subjects are sentient beings. There's no right way, correct, good, or right or wrong way, or good and evil way to treat this pen. But there is, when it comes, to treat someone. So there's no objective morality. I don't think it's a good term. I think it's confusing. But super subjective morality implies that there is a morality that's true for everybody. That it's true and universal to every subject, but it's also personal to every subject. So it's what I call super subjective. It's a term we need, but we don't have outside of this live stream. So please subscribe, but if you haven't, and share that term if you don't ever need to give me credit. I don't care, but we need it. But he said, oh, I believe in that there is a right and wrong, and I was like, that's ridiculous. Don't you know the Nazis thought that what they were doing was right? And it's like, I didn't even realize that even if that's true, that doesn't prove him wrong. Like, in fact, me saying that, it kind of is built on the assumption, I guess implicit assumption that what they, things that they did were wrong. Not every, they did a lot that was very wrong. And when people talk about them, they talk about them usually referencing the things that they did that were wrong. And this was no different in this conversation. And so, I use it as an example and built into that example was the implication that like what they did was wrong, but because what they thought they did was right, it somehow implies that there isn't an actual right and wrong, even though my using of this example implies that I believe that there's a right and wrong, because I'm kind of using it to show that like these people did what was wrong, but they thought that what they did was right. And that had nothing to do with what he was saying. I basically was saying, the fact that some people think that what they're doing is right, but actually what they're doing is wrong, just means like they're confused. It doesn't mean that there isn't actually right and wrong just because they feel like what they're doing is right, even if it's wrong. Or they feel like what they're doing is wrong, even if it's right. That's not the point. And I didn't realize that until years later after this epiphany. I didn't have an IQ change, is my point. I had a perspective shift. And I watched these videos of people, and it was this online, they were talking about, and just all these people talking about IQ. And yes, it matters within the constraints of the physical world. You are constrained in how much time you have to solve certain problems. And so your ability to solve them is sometimes dependent on IQ within the constraint of time. And maybe others constraints as well. But I don't know if it's actually as conceptually limiting. It's practically limiting, but I don't know if it's conceptually limiting IQ. But I watched a guy though on one of the wisest people I had ever seen in a video was a guy who had his IQ tested, and his IQ was in the 80s, and he was like studying the average IQs of the world, and in this video he was giving us like thoughts on it, and he was such a great thinker. And I don't say that like I'm not trying to be this is not like some kind of fake like you're the real hero, like you little like helpless moron. You're the real hero. That's not what I'm saying at all. Like, I'm being 100% honest. He was truly doing a great job thinking this through and having an accurate understanding of it. And it was obviously very much due to his own ability to be humble, which is true humility is is honesty with oneself about oneself. That's what humility is. True humility. We think it's like self-demeaning, but that's actually not true humility. I was talking to a friend of mine, famous comedian, about this today, and because he made some posts about it and did a stream about it apparently, and like he's right, and he was saying basically this, and just differently, but fake humility is the opposite of humility. It means like you are willing to lie to people because you think that your goals are more important than telling them the truth, which means you think you're more important than them, which is the opposite of humility. If you if you have a talent or you have a gift of any kind, the humble thing is to be plainly honest about it. Not to be like, if you are Bill Gates and you're like, well, I'm not even going to say Bill Gates, but if you are very you have more money than you know what to do with. And somebody's like, you know, but to others, you're like, no, we're actually like, we're not very rich. We're, you know, we have our, you know, money problems too. You just don't want them to be jealous of you, which means you have a goal that you think is more important than telling them the truth. It's the opposite of humility. But if you're like, yeah, actually, like, I don't even know what to do with all my money, and that's how much money I have. I don't even know what to do with it. Maybe I need more hobbies or something. I need more passions and more charitable goals or whatever. Then that's like humble, but not saying like, oh, I'm not actually that stupid. Like LeBron James is meant to share his gift with the world, and not meant to be like, I'm not actually that good at basketball, guys. Like, come on. It's also an insult to God, because all these things, all these gifts of either talent or a perspective that is due to experiences that you have that you didn't intend, like me, or, you know, I don't know, just like a blessing any blessing that you have, it comes from God. It doesn't come from your own efforts. Even your IQ is not something that you can take any credit for. So it's not something that you should ever, it's something that you like, it's a gift from God. And imagine if a friend of yours gave you a really thoughtful and good gift, like a really thoughtful and useful gift. And then somebody else asked you what they got you, and you didn't want to make them jealous, and you were like, they gave me, their gift was kind of shitty and it was useless, so it wasn't that good. Just because you don't want them to be jealous of you. That's like insulting to the person who gave you the gift even. And except in this circumstance, it's God who gave you the gift, and you're like, no, what he gave me is kind of shitty, actually. Like, it's not that valuable. That's not humble. Because it's not, it just implies that it's like not from someone else, and like that, and it's not real, and it's not valuable. It's demeaning to the wise one who gave it to you in all his wisdom and his, you know, graciousness. Can't comprehend. And they can't comprehend hypotheticals. Trust me. Okay. Liked and to subscribe. Fascinating as cheers. Thank you. I really appreciate it. I am so close to 3,000 subscribers, guys, and I don't care about the numbers. That's why I do these live streams so late and so long. But I kind of want to hit it just because. No, it doesn't mean anything. It's not the goal of this channel. This channel does fulfill the goals that I have. It has got me the ability to share with people who are genuinely curious and who have organically found this channel. If you're watching this, you are one of them. And especially if you watch more than 5 minutes of multiple of my streams, hats off to you. I don't even know if I have that kind of patience, to be honest. I mean, that's not true. I watch plenty of long form content, but I had actually, what's funny, my boss found a live stream of mine and was like, basically said that I lost him in seconds. He was like, he lost me in seconds. And I was like, wow, I need to watch what I say on here. But, you know, it's not meant for everybody at all times. I do think it is meant for everyone, but I don't think it's within everyone's capacity to perceive an understanding of it in all times. And I same thing. I told the story about how I tried to understand Chris Langan's theory when I was like really into my own IQ. I had like just gotten an IQ test in college, and I was like, I want to see, and I was doing super well in school, and because I was actually trying, and I was like, I want to see what I can actually do. Who's the smartest man in the world? Who has the highest IQ? I looked it up, got Chris Langan, and he's like talking about the CTMU and proving God through logic, and it just went like this. And my friend it bothered me so much. My friend had to be like, dude, it's that people like that are just so far beyond us, and it's okay to just like, you're a smart guy, but that guy is one of the smartest men in the world, and just don't worry about it. Give up. And it really hurt my ego that I couldn't understand it. Years later, I have a theophany due to my own investigations about like sentience and the goals, the inevitable goals of a sentient being, and that then I had this idea. I was like, I bet you I would understand that guy's theory about proving God with logic. Now, I went back and I just read the name, the cognitive theoretic model of the universe. I'd forgotten Chris Langan's name. I had to like look him up. Like smartest man in the world wins game show or something. And Chris Langan comes up. What's his theory on God? The cognitive theoretic model of the universe. I understood that immediately just reading the wording of it. And it's so similar to sentient singularity theory. I haven't found like a true difference yet that I can think of right now. It has different models, and its focus is a little bit different, but it seems to be entirely compatible. I would love to have Chris Langan on. I'm trying to have him on for a conversation. And I know his wife has at least watched, and so is he, but I know his wife was a fan of some of my live streams in the past. So we will see if he comes on for a conversation in 2026. If you would like to see that and you're not subscribed, subscribe. But I'm working on it. But it wasn't an IQ change, though. That's the point. That allowed me to understand the work of the man. And with the 200 IQ, like, it was just a perspective shift. And so I can't credit my IQ for like this. I credit my IQ for like helping me solve problems that I had that were circumstantial, but I don't think I can credit my IQ for helping me understand the truth about existence. I think anybody can. I think like cells can, at least enough that they need to, maybe they don't have as much that they need to understand as we do, but I do think that they can understand it, and their IQ is, I don't even know how you would measure that. What's the IQ of a mouse? I don't know, but I do think that they can understand the truth about reality as much, or the truth about existence as much as they need to. And that is like the foundational truth. It says in like theological traditions that a lot of them is that animals know God. Like, they don't have this problem of atheism that we have, and anti-theism. And I think that that's probably almost certainly always true, actually. It's our ability to conceptualize the abstract and and therefore build a language that can also be limited and misunderstood over the game of telephone that is society, that has allowed us to have misdefine certain terms and then lose our understanding of them because we lost the definition. So, our intelligence, I think, is what caused us to get lost. Like, we could contemplate the possibility of like building our own world, so we tried, and that also like has issues with it as well. It's not just all good. IQ is not your ability to understand the world. I just don't believe that. It is your ability to problem solve to circumstantially problem solve, but it is not your ability to fundamentally understand the world. As I've seen people with way higher IQs than me be way lost, and I was lost, and I was still pretty decently like talented thinker, but I had some things misdefined, and then I literally just had a perspective shift, and it changed my world, and my ability to understand my understanding of the world. So, yeah, I don't know. I don't think it's IQ. I really don't. I'm not just saying that because once I wrote something, and I wrote on my website, if you go sentientsingularity.com and you go to writings, or no, it's actually on the front. You go below right here. It says, the search for truth is the search for universality. The search for universality is the search for symmetry. The search for symmetry is the search for beauty, but the truest beauty is always the searcher, and the truth of the searcher is that they are symmetrical to the sought. That popped into my head one day I can't say from nowhere, but it was from nowhere, but it was from someone, I believe. I don't think it was from somewhere. It was from nowhere, but it was from someone. And because that is just wiser than I could have. That's just like wisdom beyond me. I think. I mean, I don't even know if that's the right way to say it, but I hate the term channeling, but like, because people like, you shouldn't ever try and channel. Like, it's just your imagination is ideas coming from beyond you. But like this one was, that was more beautiful than I have. It's the most beautiful thing I've ever written in my life. And I hesitate to take credit for it. But the point is, I posted it on my Instagram, the Theory of Everyone Instagram, which I need to post to more, but I focus on the YouTube channel. So I stopped kind of posting there after I had a kid. But I posted on there, and somebody just replied. The first comment just said, "What is your IQ?" Like, it was just like that. They thought that was like one of the smartest things they've ever read. And their first thought was like, you must have the craziest IQ. And I can tell you right now, if you're watching the stream, you probably have a higher IQ than me. I really mean that. Like, mine is like not as high as a lot of the people that I converse with on these subjects. It's not. I know it's not. It's still high. It's definitely like it's not average, but it is not as high as the people that I'm talking to about these subjects, including the ones who are right and the ones who are wrong. Both of them have on average, probably have a higher IQ than mine. I'm on the lower end of like the people who are involved in these like discussions that I'm in one-to-one. And I usually think that I have a much better understanding than most of them. I really do believe that, honestly. And so I don't think it's IQ. My life seems to be proof that it's not IQ, even though mine is high. I like good as in energy and useful. Good, not good or not, evil also. We title energy based on good, useful work. Else unknown. I may be wrong, but I'm not. This is epic. Cheers. Thank you. Searching for truth genuinely and not just rationalizing what gets social approval seems to be a rare thing, which might not have anything to do with IQ. It has nothing to do with IQ. It's humility that allows us to get to the truth, which is not self-demeaning. It's honesty with oneself, about oneself. I think Sentient Singularity Theory is the best metaphysical model for the most accurate and most foundational metaphysical model that has been presented, and most useful. I do believe that. Otherwise, why would I be doing this? It would be really, really terrible of me to be presenting this if I thought there was one better. I mean, like, I want mine accepted, even though I think that guy's is a little bit more true. And like I've said this before, I didn't have a name for my theory until I realized that nobody had a name for their theory that seemed to actually embody kind of a complete picture or complete definition of foundational existence, which requires it to say what its structure and its process. which is Sentient Singularity Theory. It's basically being theory. It's also just theism, and which is intrinsically monotheistic. There is no polytheism. It doesn't make logical sense to even say that from a linguistic perspective. But speaking of this, let's go to the next clip. Yeah, this is about religion, but yeah.
We talk about what is it either about existentialism or Kierkegaard that caught your attention and sustained it in that video?
So Kierkegaard is a very uncompromising philosopher, right? I mean, totally. When he says you face either or, he doesn't give any leeway to people who are going to be wimpy about it, right? It's a call to decision. That's how he sees faith. That's how he sees the New Testament. It's a call to decision, and this is the core of religious existentialism. You pointed out that he sees this as he puts it in terms of 3 different stages of life,
right?
And that it could be in a person's own life, it could be a temporal succession from a purely aesthetic approach to a more moral approach, to a more spiritual approach. To me, it sounds like these are 3 stages of questions, different questions that are faced and confronted by the person, by saying there's a call to decision, it is sidestepping theological issues, right? It is saying this is how you hear God's questions. You're called to decision. Like what kind of person are you going to be, right? So that was, all this occurred to me, and I was listening to you, and well, that occurred to me in other ways, other contexts, of course.
Right.
So I was quite fascinated. I thought that it was great that you included that.
I know that this is philosophy podcast, or at least right now, just for people who are tuning in, they have no idea what is this. This is called Theories of Everything, this channel, and it's about theoretical physics, philosophy, consciousness, free will, AI. Okay, I'm going to ask you an odd question. For
if you are not subscribed to Curt's channel, and you're watching this one, I don't know how you even found me without already knowing about his channel, but definitely subscribe. I think it's one of the most important YouTube channels online.
Such a podcast. Do you believe in the soul?
The soul,
Okay, so a couple things. When he's saying there's a call to decision, there's a few things about this. It's like religion. He's talking about morality, which is like acting, how you should act given the context of theism, given a theistic context, given the assumption that existence is someone. What does that mean about what we should do, how we should behave, what we should pursue, and so that's that. I think that's what he's stating there, but also when he's talking about there's a kind of this there's a binary choice when it comes to like belief in, I guess, faith. I don't really like the word faith when it comes to like belief in God, because like I said, I have faith in God's assistance because I hope he does, and I think he will help. I think he wants to help us and be, he wants us to succeed. That said, I know he exists for many personal experiences. I think he exists. I feel he exists. I feel, based on feelings in my own life, in certain circumstances, I think he exists because I think it's logically inevitable when you think about, the right questions logically. That I think is an inevitable conclusion that you get to, and is that existence is a single structure that is sentient in nature. existence by definition is a single structure because that is all that exists. There's only one existence. There's not multiple existences. And as far as you know, the truest thing that you know is that existence, that you exist, and you, by definition of being a being, and based on every moment of your experience, know that your nature is sentience. That's your nature. Your nature isn't thinking. You can think. It's not your nature. It's an action. It's an action. It's a metaphysical action. It's an informational action, but it is an action. That's why it's tiring. And you're not a body like that does things. Like, you have a body that does things. You can think, but you do feel. You have no control over it. You cannot help it. That's how you know it's your nature. Something that is not something you sometimes do and sometimes don't, or can do if you try but don't have to. It's something that you can't help but do always, constantly. That is a fundamental nature, is one that it is ever present, and it is defining. It's differentiating of you from, like, a pen. If you assume a pen is not sentient, what does that mean? It's not alive. We'll say, like, the pen is the pen alive? No. People will say no. Okay, well, what does it mean to be alive? People try and be like, oh, well, cell has to have cells and metabolism and all this stuff. That's a literally self-defeating statement when people try and do that, because they can't even know whether or not a cell has feelings and stuff. They're just like watching. Why would you think that cells are alive, but not like, just pouring baking soda and vinegar together, Why would you not think that's a living being, that, like, volcano, kindergarten volcano? Because that's not really how we define being alive. It's like cells and a metabolism and excreting and consuming. It's feeling, because how we define life is like and how we understand being alive best is through our own personal experiences. What would it mean for us to not be alive anymore? Really, like, or to not be alive, I guess, is to not, we wouldn't feel anything at all. All your feelings would be gone. Everything would be gone. Your feelings are how you create your thoughts. You don't have thoughts and then feelings, and they're separate. Your feelings and your sensations, which are kind of just physical feelings about, like, external stimuli and information, versus emotions, which are feelings about internal stimuli. But they're all just feelings, and that's how you have thoughts. It's like